But I'm going to be honest because we're being honest here. Women do not on men. Men on women.
So what are the biggest problems of dating right now?
As you see it.
We have a major cultural problem, I think, where
what you put out online is what you're trying to get eyes to look at.
I think paradox of choice is major. It's major.
How far do you think is too far for Christians?
What professions turn women off? I'm curious.
I'm not going to sit here and lie. They do.
Right,
they
right,
do.
Right.
So you may be looking for something super intense when you meet your future spouse. Like, oh, it needs to be like the lightning just flashed. But it's not. It's something soft and quiet. In today's episode of The Lila Rose Show, we sit down with a professional panel, to discuss the problems and the opportunities that Gen Z and millennials face when it comes to dating and relationships. The conversation got a little spicy. We discussed whether or not cuddling was a crutch in relationships. Was it sinful? We talked about why secular dating is inferior to Christian dating. Yes, there were some strong opinions there. What men are looking for in dating versus women, how Gen Zers have different struggles than us older millennials, and so much more. In this conversation, I have the pleasure to sit down with Alessandra Conti, who is a professional matchmaker in Beverly Hills and absolutely lovely, as well as Ryan Bethay, who's a professional bachelor and the host of The Exorcist Files, as well as Franco Aurelio of Franco TV. And we have a lot of fun and sometimes, controversial takes in this episode today. I hope you find it encouraging. And if you're listening to this and you're single, great, or you're dating, great. But if you're one of those married people or you're a celibate and you're not going to be married, beautiful. But please share this episode with a friend to share the love and to share the encouragement. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm such fans of all of you.
Oh, thank you.
We're fans too.
We're fans of us too.
You're all big hits already. You've all been on the show before, so people listening know you guys. But let's start with just your name, your relationship status, whatever you're comfortable sharing, and then just a little bit about you, 30 seconds background. So Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
My name's Ryan Bethay. I am currently unmarried, aka single, and it's exciting to be here. I work in media entertainment. I do host a popular show on exorcism, which I don't know if that makes me uniquely qualified to talk about dating, but we'll find out. And but I'm very passionate about people stepping into the fullness of everything God has for them, wherever that is, and celebrating both seasons of life, because I know people in both stations, both single and married, and it is totally possible to have an amazing, fulfilling God journey on either side of that. And so I'm just excited to talk about it because it's a big, you mentioned a good thing in your intro, Lila. It's dating, relationships, that's all part of human flourishing. And we should want whatever God has for us, wherever that leads. And so I'm just excited to dig into that. But plenty of stories from the front. Happy to report back on what's going on out there. It's a little cray-cray. But,
the trenches.
Yeah, very. I'm out there in the trenches, doing the Lord's work. So,
Yeah, my name is Franco, and do we do what our titles are? I guess.
Yeah, go title.
If you need a title, I thought we just did the litany of humility.
Fair enough.
That was before we did
call.
pray a litany of
Look
humility.
at that.
Just keeping you honest, bro.
I'm keeping opportunities for being humbled. I'm loving this. He's here to keep me in check.
We'll crop your lower third, your title.
Okay, so I am, I want to kind of repeat what you said. I am not married, so AKA single, before the eyes of God. I am currently not
Wait a minute. Sorry, I have to say something. So when you guys say that, are there girlfriends in the picture, but you're AKA single and before the eyes of God because you're not married, or you're just saying you're not wanting to share? And that's okay if you don't want to share.
Right. So I don't have a girlfriend.
Okay.
But I am also not looking to date right now. And for several reasons that we might actually get into, just general things. Just stuff that I found out like about myself. And actually this gets into the thing of like when should you not be looking for a date or whatever, and just like, and stuff that might not, because like there can be a lot of stuff that's clear, like for example, like if you're watching, well actually maybe for some Christians it's not clear, but I think for like a lot of the Catholic community it's pretty clear, like if you're watching pornography, if you're addicted to it, you should not be dating, right? But there might be other things, some other flaws that you might have that might also qualify as like maybe you should not be dating. And that's some of the things that I realized like, oh, like maybe these things, like I think that I want to get these things figured out first before I start like looking for someone. And so I think that there's like, I mean, we can chop it up all that, but yeah, that's my status right now.
We'll have an opportunity to lay all of our flaws on the table. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
I'm an open
Mine
book.
include-
So you're privately held company, not looking to be acquired anytime soon.
Yes, I love those terms.
Focusing on growth stage.
Focusing on growth stage. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Franco,
yes, yes.
what's your work? I know it, but we know it. The show might know it already.
Well, I try to be modest about it actually, but I do a lot of video editing, but I would say I'm a professional yapper and Catholic e-boy.
Love it. Awesome. The lovely Alessandra.
Yes. And excuse my voice. I'm coming off of a laryngitis fiesta, but I am Alessandra Conti. I am actually not single, but I am in a beautiful relationship with an amazing man. However, I am a professional matchmaker, and I have been on the front lines of dating myself, and I know the wild, wild west of, especially I live in LA. So I very viscerally understand from both a Christian and Catholic perspective and also from a secular perspective, because we do work with a lot of men and women that are Christian, but we also work with a lot of non-Christian men and women that are millennial, Gen Z, all of that. But yeah, I'm so excited to deep dive into this topic. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think your perspective too, being a matchmaker, is super interesting because you work with Gen Z, millennial, and other really clients of all ages.
Yeah, all
that's
ages.
Gonna be
all ages. Some look like they're Gen Z, but they're actually boomers. You know, go figure. I'm in Beverly Hills, so.
Oh wow!
Amazing what they can do these days.
I will, when the time comes.
All right. Well, very excited to dive in. Everybody knows I'm married, so that's my relationship status, as I said earlier. But again, the dating world, I was literally talking to a girl this morning. I think she was probably 23, 24. And she was talking about dating and how it's just, the guy wanted to see her, but then he was saying he wasn't ready for a relationship, but then they're like each other, but she doesn't want a situationship, but she thinks maybe he'll change his mind. I mean, it's rough out there, basically.
Yeah.
For, I think, people of all ages right now who are feeling the sense of wanting to maybe be married or date or meet that special someone. So let's start with the problems. What are the biggest problems that you all see in the dating world? And feel free to speak from personal experience. Although, Ryan, I also know you have tons of friends that you support and mentor and give advice to. You also set people up yourself. You're not a professional matchmaker, but you're an unprofessional matchmaker.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we can acquire
Ryan.
So you get an ambassador or something. Ambassador program.
But you're an eligible bachelor, so you have your experiences. So let me maybe kick us off with that, Ryan.
So what are the biggest problems with dating right now?
As you see it.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. One, we have a major cultural problem, I think, where human connection is declining. And a lot of that is screen time. It's the self-absorption that comes from just the on-demand consumeristic mentality that, and again, it's a wonderful blessing that we can have stuff DoorDash, we can have Instacart, but we're on our phones so much. Also, I think people are meeting each other less in person, and we're just not as connected as much anymore. I mean, I personally have found I've been at dinner with dear friends and felt that kind of voice in the back. I'd be like, "Hey, don't you want to go check your phone?" I'm like, quiet. Like, you just know we are so attached to our devices right now, and I do think that's having a huge issue. From my own personal experience, I have found it very interesting to see how awkward sometimes some interaction is becoming. Without phones. I mean, think about it. When we were teenagers, think how awkward we were as teenagers to begin with. Now you throw in like smartphone addiction and it's like, is there any hope? And so I think we're just not connecting as much with people, and that is limiting the options. So the at-bats are limited. And then when we do, and again, I know many people have met online on apps, several of my best friends, right? And they're incredible marriages. So it's awesome. It's actually, I think where a majority of people meet now. But I also know that when we have apps that basically give us on demand anything we want at any time, I have personally found it I don't like it. I don't like the idea of swiping. I know we do this as people. We definitely, we do passing judgments. We do glances, we immediately appraise. That's human psyche, right? To assess things. But it's funny. I've had conversations with friends of mine like, oh, they have to be this, they have to be this, they have to be like, well, sort of like a runway model, but also an astronaut, and not ripped, not too ripped, and tall, but not too tall. And we just have these wild expectations. And To quote my good friend John Pacluda, JP, he talks about we have such a consumer-driven culture right now that we're just focused on what is in it for me, where can I get the perfect match? And as we all know, right, even happily married, there is no perfect match, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Hey,
my
husband,
I knew you want to stand up,
perfect.
Well,
No,
you guys become more attuned
Yeah, I know,
to each
I'm
other
just
through
joking.
but it's
through
just
good
tough, right?
words.
So that's I
I'm
think
not going to pretend it's perfect. Nothing's perfect. I am very picky about the skincare products that I use. And I'm also picky about the companies that I want to buy from. That's why I love NimiSkincare.com. Nimi Skincare has the holy grail of sunscreen, in my opinion, which is their SPF day brightening protection. I use this product every morning and I absolutely love it. And I think you will too. Nimi Skincare only uses the most effective and clean ingredients for all their skincare products. What I also love about Nimi Skincare is that this is a pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom company that aligns with our values. One bundle that I love at Nimi is the Clean Transformation Trio. This simple 3-step system features a gentle cleanser, a hydrating toner, and a nourishing moisturizer, which are all formulated with high-impact, science-backed, clean ingredients. The Clean Transformation Trio is paraben-free, cruelty-free, and made in the USA, giving you radiant and healthy skin quickly and effectively so you can feel good inside and out. You can go to NimiSkincare.com and use the code Lila for a full 15% off your order. And that's NIMI Skincare.com. Use the code Lila for 15% off your order.
that's what I
in
would say
this
is the
life.
biggest issue is the human connection part, and then the consumer mentality. And I think is a subcategory that you could argue also the rampant effect of pornography on the culture.
Yeah.
It is severely compromising, I think, a lot of people's ability to bond. I mean, because we know pornography now from neuroscience, like destroys our ability to adhere and to bond to people. And so if that's messing up our minds, it's like there is this overall just attack on our abilities to connect and to attach. And I think that's why we're seeing so many issues. And so that's something where I think it's tougher for people today. And then it's like there's more options than ever before and less connection.
Yeah.
And it's making it really tough.
Can I ask something to that actually? Like on the pornography aspect? Because the pornography topic is actually one thing that actually led me down the rabbit hole, I guess, would say, with my politics and then later to, now my religion. But and it's so interesting that you mentioned this because of how, of course, it's obviously really bad because you're literally you're committing spiritual fornication essentially, and it would be adultery of the heart, but I think so, if I remember correctly, scientifically pornography does damage your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for the self-control aspect. And again, if I'm maybe getting some things here, just fact check me just in case, because this has been a while since I reviewed the information, but
I'm glad you're not an expert in it.
being authentic, okay. but if what I'm remembering is correct, right, this is the self-control aspect goes into so many aspects of a relationship and also looking for a relationship, on both ends. So if you're not able to have the best self-control with your emotions, with your inclinations, with your temptations and all that stuff, you might not be the most patient. You might not be the most trusting of the plan and stuff like that, God's plan even, right? That lack of self-control can lead into so many things. And it's so unfortunate that some people might just cave and be oh, well, it's fine. Just have several wives, or just, you don't have to commit to one and whatnot, right? That's not even it just kind of even confirmation biases the whole thing of oh, you don't have to stick to one and have that self-control and whatnot, right? I mean, the fact is you are your dopamine receptors are being literally distorted to such a horrible extent, and it's just there's so many bad fruits that come from it. But yeah, pornography is one of the biggest things. I just kind of want to jump in there. I'm not sure if you were done. I just want to let you continue though.
No, that's right. No, you hit on the head. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, and also just the selfishness aspect. It leads back to selfishness. With selfishness, it's just constantly just thinking about me, and it's just that the whole point of you're supposed to die to your spouse, right? Well, men are called to die for their wives, right? And of course, the wives are supposed to submit to the husbands and whatnot. It's a mutual mutual love, right? It's a mutual it's a beautiful thing. And when you're focused so much on yourself to a very maybe there can be in a healthy extent, right? Taking care of yourself, how God would take care of you, but to such a selfish maybe satanic way or whatnot, that's when it's it really leads into so many problems, both in relationships and as you're looking at a relationship. So you really want to check the vanity, the pride, just all the things that root from pride.
I completely, everything you guys said, beautiful. I mean, I think paradox of choice is major. It's major. And I also think that there are pretty large differences when it comes to millennial frustrations and then Gen Z frustrations. And I think that with the millennial generation, what I'm seeing most is exhaustion. They're exhausted. They're exhausted. They have been dating. They want to find their person. And I read something about post-traumatic dating disorder. Like some of these people are now owning this post-traumatic dating disorder because they've had a lot of failed experiences, and they want, they want marriage, they want kids, they want all of those things, but it takes so much it takes so much strength to go back into dating after going through a breakup and after going through a relationship where you really thought it was going to be the person and then it wasn't. So that, I think that is really huge, that frustration and that exhaustion. And I think for Gen Z, I think that we're growing up right now in the psychology boom where everything that I know, when I look at my Instagram, everything is diagnosing everybody. And it's like, 5 red flags that you're dating a narcissist. And then it's like, oh my gosh, he drinks water. And oh my goodness, he, talks about himself on the first date. Oh my gosh, he's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. And you know what? He also has borderline personality disorder. So you see just all of these men and women that are dating and they go on one date and
some of them do, Alessandra.
Yeah, some of them do. No. I mean, to be clear, and I think the propensity of it is a lot higher in Los Angeles than in other areas or a bigger city. No, I think people are self-sabotaging themselves out of relationships because they're so judgmental. And I really also am a big believer that the enemy works in and through, unfortunately, social media. So we have to be so guarded. It is not just porn. Let me tell you, it is not just porn. Yeah. Men are looking at these perfect images of women every single day. And it's not just, back when we were growing up, when the millennials were growing up, we would see them on billboards. So it wasn't as big. It was like, okay, magazines, billboard, all right, whatever. But then you saw, your mom, you saw your sister, you saw your sister's friends, and you knew that real women, didn't have perfect symmetrical faces and waists and everything, but
cartoony faces with a crap ton of filter.
But now we're so on social media that men's brains are being morphed. And I see this with my male clients, and we have had to tell multiple male clients, you need to get off of Instagram because it is polluting your brain. Even she doesn't look like that because they'll send us pictures of these women.
We can hold the women accountable too.
Oh yeah, right?
Because the men are
don't add any filters on us.
No, filter me.
Speak for yourself, Gen Z.
Yes, exactly.
We're authentic. We're Zoomers, all right. We're confident.
But I think women like to use TikTok and Gen Z as sort of a way to showcase their best aesthetic. Let's put it that way, maybe. So they're creating the context for men to say, well, that's the aesthetic. Like that's what I'm seeing. So why isn't that what I'm getting in real life?
Yes.
So it's a mutual issue. It sounds like.
I think it is, but I'm going to be honest because we're being honest here. We do not have the same beauty standards and parameters. Women do not place those on men. Men place those on women. And I'm not pointing fingers. I get it. It's, I get it. It is what it is. But I'm just being honest. I don't see that with our female clients. Our female clients are not as physically picky. However, they are picky when it comes to career.
Yes.
And what does he do for work?
What do they want? What are the number one jobs that they like? Is it still doctor and lawyer, or do they want them to be an influencer?
No, oh my gosh. Oh,
what professions turn women off? I'm curious. Like,
I think that things have changed in that.
That'll be $50.99. Yeah. $49.99 for that answer. No,
right. I think things have changed. I think there's certain women that really value a very kind of stable, old school job, like a doctor, an attorney, an engineer. You know, there are a lot of women that love that. But then we get these really cool women that are like, yeah, like I have a podcast myself or whatever. And they like somebody that doesn't have a traditional 9 to 5, but they want the men that are successful. They do. They do.
Right, yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and lie. They do.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, in our office, they come, and that's their number one thing is they want somebody.
So it sounds like what you're saying, and even what you guys are saying to some degree, it's like the expectations.
Yes.
The expectations on both sides are out of whack. And so what you were saying about JP Pokluda, who I'd love to have on the show sometimes, he's awesome. But I think you were saying this during this episode, or maybe you were saying it before, but you were talking about how there is this materialistic lens that we see human beings through, both physically for their physical beauty. Yeah. And there's, you know, how attractive they are or seem to be. And then for their material well-being and how much they can give or provide. And so we're kind of commodifying each other.
And I don't want, and here's the thing, like, I don't want to downplay like the importance of beauty, because beauty is, you know, it's given to us by God and stuff like that. But I think there can be an extent where we start like making it almost an idol. And like on the male side, it's like, yeah, like, of course we would want to have an attractive wife, right? But at the same time, like, you have to make sure, like, if you're attracted to her, yes, that's good. But you can't be like, okay, I want to get like, you know, all these features and whatnot. Like, you have to make sure that you're like, okay, like holding yourself to the same standard, I guess, in a way, as well as like, okay, well, make sure that you're working out as well. Like, make sure she's fit, you're fit and stuff like that. Just make sure that she's also like good hygiene, that you're hygiene and stuff like that, right? But also like on the flip side as well, it's just that with, you know, the stuff of finance and whatnot, right? Of course, like these are just things that like, you know, men of course are more visual, women crave more security and stuff like that because of just, these are just things of like, you know, more survival, right? But and there is a reality to that, 100%. I don't want to deny that, but at the same time, it can get to the point where it becomes materialistic.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
Very
I'm not
materialistic.
saying it's.
No, I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm not saying you're saying that. Like I think a lot of people do like essentially like just distort that really badly, and like it's like if it does like sometimes they might even compromise like what is virtuous for what is like more secure or more pretty or more attractive from the male side or more etc. Like just a materialistic focus, unfortunately.
Bed sheets matter. You want bed sheets that are silky, smooth, breathable, made from good materials that are healthy for your skin. I've been so thrilled to sleep on sheets made by CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth sheets are made from viscose from bamboo, and they are the silkiest, softest sheets that you will ever sleep on. They also wash really well. We've washed ours now many, many times, and they're still as silky as they were on day one. Cozy Earth also has the most premium and comfy cozy robes. They have these wonderful viscose from bamboo pajamas. I also wear those. If you want to buy a gift for a loved one, a gift for your spouse, a gift for your parents, if you want to buy a gift for yourself, go to CozyEarth.com today. Use the code Lila at checkout for a full 40% off your order. Get your sheets, get your robes, get your joggers, get whatever product you think you most want to treat yourself or your loved one with, and go to CozyEarth.com using the code Lila for a full 40% off your order.
Our culture worships youth, right? It worships youth and beauty, and it extols that, right? And those are like cool things, but they're not the thing, right? And I often think about even the spiritual parallel, right? When the Apostle Paul talks about, hey, like, I don't even know what I should pray for, right? And thank God that we have a spirit who like prays alongside and makes our prayers like, you know, less insufferable, right? And so I even think about, here's a question too. It's like, do we, on one level, we know like some people like cilantro and some people hate cilantro, right? It's just a thing that's there, right? So there are preferences, and look, Song of Solomon is in the Bible for a reason, right? Beauty is to be sought. You know, a lot of people can also say, well, you know, beauty doesn't matter, right? Because yes, we know, you know, charm is deceiving, beauty is fleeting, right? And character lasts. However, it's like, there's enough in scripture to say, hey, look, yeah, it's a thing. God made beauty. Like it's there. But I also think sometimes like in a broken world, if I don't even know what to pray for, right? If my motives are even off in my prayer life, I wonder sometimes like, and one of my big prayers, honestly, with relationships is like, God, like, I want what you know is good for me. And actually, you might even know what I actually want. Here's what I say I want, because I'm sure you've seen this, right? People say they want something or going to do something, and then their actions the amount of like my female friends who said at one point, like, I'm looking for this, and I'd be very vague here to respect everybody, but like, I'm looking for this. And then the actions, right? And of course, guys do this too. But like, it was like, whoa, everyone's saying what they want and then behaving totally differently. And I thought, man, do we even know what we want? And so I'm still like in that tension of trying to wrestle through, okay, God, what is a natural desire that you've placed on my heart? And say, yeah, like you love cilantro, which I do. I love cilantro, right? Some people hate it. And you go, I legit like cilantro. Some people know. Some people, it tastes like, I forget the compare. It's a genetic thing. It tastes awful to them. But then you go, okay, God, so big prayer is like, Lord, open the eyes of my heart. Show me, what do you actually think? Hey, man, I know you think you want this, right? But this is actually good for you. Like, this is great. And then I remember I had a Catholic friend of mine in DC. We were hanging out with a bunch of Dominicans, which is always dangerous, right? They're too smart. And he said, one thing to consider too is like, look at where you're lacking in your life, right? From your like, what do you need to focus on character-wise? Yeah. And then what if you pick someone? And again, I'm not saying this is the thing to do, but I found it as such an interesting like framework. What if you pick someone who will force, by their very differences, force you to grow in the areas that you consider character deficits? So say as a really, like light example, like say you love to eat, right? You're just like culinary, you love Michelin restaurants, you're picky about that, right? And then you marry someone and you're like, oh man, because I know people like, I will never date a vegan, or I won't date anyone who's not vegan, right? And I have one of my really close friends, he married a vegan, she went carnivore last month. Like, you don't know what's going to happen 10 years down the line, right? And so you never know. But it's like, what if, right? Like, what if you say, hey, I'm actually, man, I really index on food a lot. I love food. It's a huge part of my life. And I married someone who's like, they can't do all that stuff with me, at least for the time being. Yeah. Am I willing to be like, oh, maybe I need to like, it's going to be harder for me. And so I'm going to view that as like a growth opportunity. So I thought that was such an interesting, like, pick someone who could help you grow in the areas that you want to. So I'll say, I don't know if we know what we actually want.
I think it's always great to make sure that we're focused more on what God knows that we want instead of what we think we want, if that makes sense.
I mean, I see this every day, and we even have kind of a strategy of how to help people get out of their own way. So typically when people come in and they get a certain number of matches, we will give them basically like what they ask for in their first match. And it's so wild. After 13 years now, as I age right in front of everyone, it's so fascinating how then they kind of take a step back, and then we say, okay, why don't you let us kind of do our little bippity boppity booing. and because we know that you're talking about polarity. This is exactly what you're talking about is wanting somebody that is different, but there will be resistance, much like anything else that's good for us, like going to the gym. There's so much resistance in going to the gym. Maybe not for you guys. I mean, for me, there's a lot of resistance.
We're swole-mates. We love going to the gym.
I'm going to hit some more. I'm still.
There's a lot of resistance, but I know how good it is for me. But and Matthew Kelly even has an amazing book. I think it's called, it's all about resistance. Why am I forgetting the name? But anyway, Matthew Kelly is just amazing. Read everything he's ever written. But yeah, I think resistance is huge. So I think that part of my job is helping people get out of their own way. But at the same time, people can get out of their own way by just learning about this as we're talking about it in discussion. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point because, and I've just I'm not a professional matchmaker, but
you've matched a
few people, but nothing like what you've been able to do, obviously. But what I've seen, and this is just personal to me too, when I met my husband, I remember my mother saying, and this was years before I even met my husband, she reminded me of it when I met him. She's like, you should marry someone in the military who is in or was in the military. She would just kind of make these comments. And I'm like, Mom, like, I'm not really, I love our military members, service members. It's not like I'm against our military, but I wasn't like, oh, I want to be with a Marine. There's more just like, I like, artistic, and I like travel and, creative stuff, whatever. I'm like, that wasn't in my mind on my list. Right. But my mother, a lot of the time, moms know best, not all moms, but if you've got a good mom, hold on to her, God bless her. Right. And so anyways, my husband was in the military. He's retired now from the military. He's not active duty, but he was in the military. And on paper, if you had told me this will be your husband 10 years prior, I would have been surprised, maybe a little bit, like because of his resume, you could say, because my zone that I was in, to your polarity thing, it was a very different zone than the zone that he is in, but we have some very deep connectivity he is artistic, he is into music. So we have those connectivities. But the point is, what you might envision in your mind, what your list might say, might not be the right vision or the right list. But you still need to have a desire, obviously, for the person and an attraction for the person. But you need to have an open mind.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that is maybe difficult for some people, is to go into it with an open mind as well as standards. So there's like expectations over here, which are out of control. And then there's an open mind of like what God can do. And then there's your standards of, shared morals, shared foundation of faith that you don't want to set aside. What I have seen happen, and I want to shut up because I want to hear what you guys have to say, but what I have seen happen often is people's expectations are too extreme in terms of these sort of like, oh, they're going to be an artist or whatever. They're going to be 7 feet tall or whatever it is.
7 feet tall.
I don't know, whatever.
You're not even that.
But then they aren't holding true to the things that actually matter. Like, how are we going to raise our kids? Are we raising our kids in a Christian household? Are you going to be a spiritual leader and I'm going to, follow your lead? Or are we not doing that? Because that's actually what matters the most. Right. So it's like we have this tendency in today's world to like compromise on the things that matter the most and then not compromise on things that matter the least.
Yeah. And even that, like, even on like simply getting like someone like, oh, like I actually know what marriage is for. Like, even on that, it's like, it's kind of even with that, with looking with people that are actually devout, godly people, even then it's like, okay, well, how do you know who you're supposed to actually end up with? And as people are watching this, like, we are mentioning God a lot in this interview. And I think this cannot go understated, is that you are not, it goes back to selfishness. We're not supposed to do this alone. Right. And even on that, and it's not even just me and God. And like, it's not just this like idea of just like you and your intellectual relationship with God. It's like you and the relationship with him, including his body, including the body of God, the body of Christ.
Other Christians.
Exactly. The church. Right. So, and that church has a hierarchy. So we are supposed to get like, and the eye is not the hand is not the eye, but the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. We need each other. So he has made us as a family. So we are supposed, like, yes, pray. That is 100%. Go to him directly, pray to him and ask him for his help. But we are not meant to do this without with decapitating him with just his head. We're supposed to do it with the entire body.
So what does that mean practically for you?
That means, well, I mean, of course I'm a Catholic, so that like one of the easiest answers I would say is like, go to a Catholic priest. Go to a Catholic priest, try to
get the advice of a spiritual
counselor, right? Either a Catholic priest or someone that's that's well versed in good practices, that are very much based on traditional Christian teachings and all that stuff, right? Like Catholic teachings. And if you're not Catholic, go to someone who is like a good mentor to you, that actually has like someone older and wiser, that has done this more than you, that has a good prayer life, is like fits a lot of the requirements of who an elder is supposed to be biblically, right? Like, go to someone that actually is wiser than you. Like, and again, like you want to make sure that you're not doing this alone. And God can and will use other people to help us. He does that with the Bible. We wouldn't have the Bible unless other humans wrote the Bible, printed the Bible. We need each other. So we cannot underplay the importance that God has in our lives and his body has in our lives.
WeHeartNutrition.com is a vitamin and supplement company that provides the highest quality, research-backed ingredients, customized and optimized to help you be healthy. What I also love about We Heart Nutrition is that this is a family-owned company, and they donate a full 10% back of all of their revenue to pregnancy resource centers to help moms and babies in need. So whether you are premenopausal or postmenopausal, whether you're looking to conceive, help improve your fertility, whether you're pregnant, and this is a great prenatal vitamin, or you're postnatal. Plus, I'm very excited to share this with my husband. Now We Heart Nutrition has come out with their first line of men's vitamins. And if you order today at WeHeartNutrition.com, get your vitamins, you can get 20% off using the code Lila. And if you spend at least $50, you will get a free signature bamboo capsule vitamin box. So go to WeHeartNutrition.com today. Use the code Lila at checkout to get 20% off your purchase. That's WeHeartNutrition.com. I'm curious, Ryan, your thoughts on, thank you, Franco. Your thoughts on something that Alessandra was just saying about the, what women are expecting versus what men seem to be expecting today. And your point about seeing this from a Christian perspective, like what's the point of this as Christians, and we need each other as Christians, yes. I think is going to be key to this. But let's do another round on this question. about the roles of men and women in dating and in marriage, and how cultural expectations have maybe changed, or where the cultural expectations are maybe off. And this will, I think, connect back to faith, of course. So what are your thoughts on that?
So are we asking about the expectations or the cultural roles? Or
both. Like both the expectations, like Alessandra's saying that women want the man to be able to provide and have a successful career. The men want the woman to be beautiful. Often that's a sign of fertility, but maybe they're not even wanting that for the sake of children. They just want beauty.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, so I mean, one, like you could get into a whole, and I don't want to get into a whole theological, like, egalitarian versus complementarian, right? I mean, who are we to say, like, people have different preferences, and I know amazing marriages where people have different leadership roles, and yeah, I think from scripture, right, you could say, okay, yes, is there a spiritual leadership role for the husband in scripture? It's like, yeah, that seems to be interpreted, but also it's like marriage is a team. And, I always hear that because I have like really good friends who are like, man, I cannot imagine making an enormous decision in anything without my wife's buy-in. So I don't like getting caught up in like compliments, because I know smart people on both sides of that. But I will say that as far as an expectation thing, one, like, hey, you get to want what you want. There's a weird part where it's like, hey, like if you really love talking philosophy and theology, right, and you want that in a partner, great. Like that's awesome. And that's good for you, right? And so, and just as long as you temper that and say, look, there is not one person out there. One thing I really appreciate that I had a mentor tell me was, hey, you cannot expect someone you date to fulfill like literally all your needs. It sounds obvious, but it's like, hey, maybe you love staying up late and debating politics, right? Is that a deal breaker? You can argue, okay, is that a deal breaker? Or hiking. You say, for example, I love hiking. I hike all the time. I have dated amazing women who don't like hiking, right? And yeah, it's a bummer when you're like, it'd be awesome if we could do this. But he's like, well, what if hiking is your time to go pray with God? And you go do that with Franco. You guys go hiking, right? I'm sure many people have told you to take a hike, right? So I'm going, okay, that's an element where you shouldn't put those expectations on a partner. And then I will say one expectation, we're talking about like a spiritual component. Because we're talking about Christian dating, right? You cannot separate the fact that, right, there is a should versus could framework here, right? Like there are many biblical principles outlined. There's great research on what makes a good mate. But at the end of the day, for example, I have an expectation and a hope, right? My hope is that the Holy Spirit will make clear, hey, this is someone, and I don't like the word soulmate. I don't like intended, because if one person gets that wrong, then we're all screwed, right? That throws off the whole order. But I do love the idea of, in the same way the Holy Spirit is involved in all our lives, in all these major decisions, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, is there a bigger decision after choosing, faith than who you marry, as far as what can impact you and your legacy and your dynasty, all that stuff? And so I have an expectation and a hope, God, like you'll make it clear. That may not mean absolutely, free of anxiety, because it's a huge decision, et cetera. But it's like, hey, I want to know that I know. And I hear from a lot of people like, hey, I knew, like it was a weird thing, but I met that person. It was something different, right? So that's the expectation that I am like hopeful for, and I think people can have. But as far as like all the other like checklist items, man, I think we are all way too, because that a lot of times the people in our, they don't exist. We've fabricated them out of movies, right? And that's why I love watching, certain movies where it's like, man, that character's amazing. He's not real. Yeah. And no one thinks that way, or no one does that, right? So I'm guilty of this too. I have been way too picky. And I'm like, also, I had a mentor ask me, would you like it if someone applied the same standard you're applying to you? And I went, no, not at all. So I'm really trying to be in a posture of like, Lord, hey, you are writing my story in life. We know that in scripture, a man's heart chooses the way, the Lord directs his steps, Proverbs 16:9. And I have absolute faith that God is also involved in that, in our matchmaking. And it's different. And it's case, everyone's different. Everyone's story is different.
I think it's so challenging because in the modern culture, when you're using dating apps, and I remember in my single season when I finally said, okay, I'm only going to date Christian men, because I dated one of my exes was Muslim, and he was amazing. Oh my word, great guy, super passionate, all of those wonderful things. But there were some major value-based differences that I had to finally say, enough is enough. I have to stop doing this to myself, because, this is not going to be my husband. So I know personally that was something I had to say, okay, This time around, I am only dating Christian men. But what I'm telling you, even as a matchmaker, knowing all of this, when you implement it, it's so challenging because when you're looking on the dating apps and you see, even if you just, I'm a matchmaker. Yes, I had all of my matchmaker friends set me up with their most fabulous Christian male clients. It was wonderful. I was very, very blessed in that season. But then I, of course, was like, oh my goodness, like, let me experience these dating apps. Let's see what this is all about. Let's see what this is. And it was traumatic. It was traumatic. It was so traumatizing because I thought, oh, I saw the Christian label on, I won't say the name of the app, but like it would be, oh, he's Christian. I was like, oh, I'm safe. Okay, I'm safe. Oh, I was not safe. I was not. No, but it was like, okay, you're a Christian man. So then you give them a little, you're like, oh, okay. But you really have to dig in a lot more. And there's such a practical, when you are dating and you need to be ready with what Lila was talking about, with knowing what your real deal breakers are. And I'm not talking about, is he 6 foot plus? What a blessing if the man is 6 foot plus, but what a blessing if he's under that. There's so many, they're amazing. Yeah, they're amazing. I've met a great 5'2" guy. I thought he was incredible.
What happened to him?
Well, I mean, he was a client and we matched him. We matched.
Good catch.
So wonderful. But he was such an overachiever.
He was such an overachiever, but he was
and it's okay. But we could then, but we then set him up with, and some women like, I can't. But all of this to say, it's you have to be ready with, like, when you are dating in this dating scene, you have to be ready and you have to know the questions to ask and know what your values are. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And there are a lot of these men that are, parading they have that Christian label and they're, oh yeah, like, I go to church, and okay, but
it was a great impression of man.
Thank you so much. But it's like, how are you living? What are your values? Do you have integrity? How are you, are you somebody that's not
6 foot,
honest, but like honesty. So it's really learning that person beyond, oh yeah, I go to church. And, there are men that like do daily mass, but they are, not sexually pure. So you have to be really careful when you're in the dating scene.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it is, like, ladies, I get it. It's very challenging. So you have to know the right questions to ask and also allow people to unfold.
So we have to, it goes both ways, because I will say anyone can say they're a Christian, right?
Yes.
And that's like, and it's really tough because it's, and also people can sincerely believe they're a Christian, right? And then you go, oh, so you're right. You have to have the value sets and the dating. I'm with you, because on some of the dating apps, like, there are people I'm like, whoa, you are so attractive. And then I look at some of these pictures. And again, I hate the idea of judging someone on a picture, right? Because also someone could be awesome and just being like, hey, I'm feeling like undesired. And so I'm putting out a picture of myself on there that's like, all right, probably not the most modest thing, but you're like, oh, because I know awesome, amazing women who are just like, yeah, like, that's the way to get, like, someone to like click on their profile, right? And like, guys have their own version of it. It's the picture with them with their dog, jogging at Runyon, right? There's also, you can basically now guess
on a private jet.
And it's like glass of wine, which says like, I can drink, but I don't too much, And but I will say, I have met many people who, like, you sometimes will just swipe like, hey, like, there's certain pictures, like you say, I'm a Christian, and then you see some of these photos and you're like, I am not, like, I don't. And again, you can't judge someone. And that's the other part. You can't judge someone off just this. But like, if you're choosing to go out, someone made this joke, and I don't know if this is a line that's well documented. It's like, hey, you catch the kind of fish based on the bait you use, right? And I went, and if that's what you're going, and there'll always be someone younger and more attractive, like, and for all of us. And it's just like, that can't be the thing we double down on, right? And I also will say, every girl that I've dated had a great experience with, from 5'2" and up. I will say, I met in person and we met as friends. Yeah. And then over time, and what probably would have been someone, as I think back, like, I probably wouldn't have swiped.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden I go, wait, one day you're like, why do I miss this person when they're gone? Right. And you develop this. And that's what I'm so like mourning for the loss in this like culture. It's so hard to like just meet those. And especially you mentioned millennials, when you're not in college anymore and you're not, also a lot of us work from home or like privately, and it's like, I host a huge exorcism podcast, right? The dating pool around that is actually very interesting.
It's interesting listening to you guys talking about dating apps because like I don't use dating apps.
Yeah.
I am
Are you unusual though for a Gen Zer to not use a
I'm
dating
probably
app?
unusual, but here's the thing.
A lot have opted out.
And I
And
think
you've never used
All
them?
have opted out.
I think I might have briefly used it one time when I was like in maybe early
Because
college.
if we were
but,
to
like,
search, bring this out right now.
go for it. No, go for it. Go for it. And
He's not on dating apps. I can confirm.
go for it. No, I as I'm
Just
listening to
Instacart.
like, when you touched on the topic of how people how they present themselves and stuff, and you can't judge them. And I agree, you cannot judge them, right? Because you don't know their heart. But at the same time, it's like you are choosing what you're trying to promote yourself as. There are like when you put out images, like how you dress is how you're trying to show yourself to the public. What you put out online is what you're trying to get eyes to look at. So if you want people to look at your wealth, your money, your fancy cars, etc., that's on the male side. For women, if you want people to look at your body, your curves, your etc., like again, I'm not saying that women shouldn't look for a man that can hopefully is responsible and can provide to his best extent for her, or that a man can't look for a woman who is like he finds attractive that he wants to procreate with. I'm saying like when you're starting to become like, I think that there's so much breeding ground for materialism in dating apps and stuff like that, and unfortunately it's so tragic because like it does attract a lot of people. A lot of people do have a lot of those temptations to like go for like that materialistic stuff, whether on the male side or the female side. And I think that's so tragic. And again, it just goes back to God. Like, and again, like God knows what will make you the happiest. God knows what will make you the happiest. Don't be afraid to trust in Him, and don't be afraid to compromise. I'm not saying be scrupulously picky. That's where the praying and the counselors come in, right? But like but also like don't compromise on stuff that you know for sure. Like this is not something that I want in my marriage, and I've gotten to these conclusions based on prayer and good guidance and whatnot. Like it's just so, I feel like it's just so tragic just how a lot of people promote themselves. And honestly, I think that's the beauty of meeting people online, in person, because you're really just going off of like their personality. Well, hopefully, I mean, unless they're like, walking, whether the guy's like walking around in like a $3,000 suit, or like the woman's walking around like very, I don't know, maybe immodestly dressed or whatever. It's like, then of course there's differences there. But the aspect there is like, you want to make sure that you're maximizing how people can focus on you as a person, with sure some attractiveness, of course, but you want to make sure the most focus is on you as the person, because that's what like seals the deal. That's why you marry someone. It's because of their soul. Yes, the attractiveness must be there, but the deal is sealed because of the soul.
I think the virtue you're talking about is modesty, both for men and for women.
Yes.
And if you want, I mean, this kind of goes back to expectations we were talking about earlier, like what are the current expectations out there? And it's like, you got to put out the bait to catch the fish, or like this is how these girls know they're going to get clicked on, or the guys
too, for the way,
and the guys
guys
get clicked on. But if you're looking for someone who, yes, you want this to be the love of your life, your best friend, you need to be attracted to them, but you want this to be potentially the father of your children or the mother of your children. This is a serious deal. This isn't like, is she cute or is he cute? This is a serious deal in terms of, is this someone that I would entrust my offspring into, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where a few people have said, we're not going to judge, we're not going to judge. Well, you do judge when you're dating. Dating is about good judgment. Discernment is about judgment, not to judge or malign the deepest motivations of their
like
heart.
the soul,
of course
not
not.
judging the soul,
You're not
but
judging
but you're
their
judging
soul
actions,
eternally,
essentially,
but you're absolutely making discernment. You're using your discernment to say, is this someone that I should click on, so to speak, or I should ask out, or if you're a woman, it is someone that I want to pursue something with. And I think that's a healthy thing to have that discernment. Of course, you're going to have that discernment.
I'm curious if we can put you on the spot. When you met your husband, what was your love story? Were you attracted right away? Was there chemistry right away?
So curious about this actually.
Or was it more like a slow burn? Was it a Jim and Pam situation from The Office?
So I think when I first met him, I definitely thought he was cute. He's handsome. He's objectively handsome, but it wasn't like butterflies, stars to star, lightning
and
flashing.
You know what that's like, though. You had experience.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think there is and it ended up, and for him, I think he was very like excited, thankfully, and asked me out. But I wasn't going into like, I I just met the man I'm going to marry, you know? But I was definitely interested in him and, you know, excited that he wanted to take me out. I was like, yeah, I'll totally go out with this guy. It was a mutual meetup where my brother knew him. And so he put a group together and
so you guys met as friends. Yeah.
We met as friends. Yeah. And now it quickly moved into dating like right away. Like he asked me out, but we met in a kind of, it felt lower stakes because it wasn't like a blind date. Mm-hmm. Now the circumstances were it was my brother and his wife, my best friend and a fiance, and then my husband and I. So it was a kind of an unusual group in that, but it wasn't a blind date. We weren't set up on a blind date.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, I guess the lesson, maybe the takeaway for my little story is that the sudden sparks. I think some people, especially depending on your personality type, everything's an adventure. That's kind of the way I am. You're open to everything. Mm-hmm. Everything's exciting. Like everything's a spark. Like everything's like a connection and an opportunity. But then, so you may be looking for something super intense when you meet your future spouse. Like, oh, it needs to be like the lightning just flashed, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's something soft and quiet. It's like the gentle whisper of the Holy Spirit. It's like, oh.
And that's not most. I will say from my friend, I love asking now. Like all my friends are married. To say whether I knew them through their love story. Whenever I meet married couple, and I ask that question, right? And I will say, what's really interesting is the vast majority. It was not a lightning bolt. There was a when you know, you know. So there was a moment when they just felt the peace, and that peace didn't mean no anxiety. That peace didn't mean like because you can't unknow like, oh my gosh, this is a big decision, right? No one can be unaware of that, right? But yeah, I think for most people it was like a cool, and it's funny. The other thing that was interesting is for most of the time, the girl was like, yeah, like I'll give him a shot. Right. And I wonder if that's like also women have to be more guarded because like you have to assume that men always have like ulterior motives but then in other cases, the guy like in almost all this is like 2 out of 3. The guy was like, oh yeah, like I'm asking her out. And the girl's like, okay, like, we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see if you're like the real deal, right? But and then you guys started dating, and then was it relatively quickly that you kind of the sparks and like it caught up? I think I would love people to hear that, like, hey, like a great, honest, like, you know, someone that my friend group who trusts and knows me well was like, hey, you should meet this person. We had a hangout sesh, and I quickly, like over time, got to know this person, and that grew.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for us, it was that we kind of, I think, pretty quickly, I would say within 3 months, there was a strong sense of, I think this is the one.
Cool.
But we were in the same community and we were seeing each other multiple days a week, you know, at least on weekends at first. And then we would see each other, you know, more. So we were both busy, but it wasn't a long distance relationship. I think it's easy for there to be a long distance relationship and you have these ideas about the person that aren't necessarily fully real. And so you kind of jump to a conclusion. That's why if you're going to date, I always like give it time, like give yourself time.
Yes.
But then we didn't get engaged for another year. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like we jumped into engagement. There were a lot of things going on in his life and in my life that were, you know, things to sort through, basically.
Taking down Planned Parenthood and stuff.
I mean, I don't know.
I'm curious, were there any things you felt you were too picky on, Liz, since you're asking us this? Were there anything that you're like, oh man, like this isn't what I envisioned, and it took you a minute to get over? And if you don't want to get into specifics, you can, but I'm just curious, were there things you're like, oh, like, I don't know about that, right? As part of the dating process, I think we all encounter those things, and you're like, yeah, like I want to work through that, or no, like that's tough, you know?
I think because I had dated a lot of other guys, I had more of a sense of what mattered and what didn't.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I if you had asked me that at age 23, I would have maybe been like, yeah, like, you know, and if I'd met my husband at 23, I might have been more like picky in terms of things that don't matter. Mm-hmm. And again, he's amazing. So I'm not trying to say there's things that I don't love. You know, I love him at 100%, right? Yeah. But by the time that I met him, I was 28. I had definitely, you know, dated a lot of different kinds of guys too. Yeah. And so I had a sense for what mattered. And he also had dated a number of girls. He had a sense for what mattered too.
And that gives,
I think
like,
that
a sense of
helped
clarity.
a lot.
Yeah. Like just like. So
it wasn't a big drama. I think that's what it comes. It's a maturity thing. Like it wasn't this big drama of like, oh, but like, whatever the thing is, right? He doesn't love to hike, or he does love to hike, but you know, whatever the thing is, like, oh, he, you know, I'm trying to think what it would have been at 23 that, oh, he's, you know, he's not crusading around the world. Yeah. You know, he's in the military, right? He's now a lawyer. Like it's not your typical, like, you know, free-spirited entrepreneur traveling the world and doing his crazy gig, you know?
I think that speaks to the importance, like, of, like, you know, that you and him had been already dating around a lot. Like, I think that speaks to the importance of, like, chaste dating, because like I feel like with a lot of chaste dating, you're able to essentially like get to know more of yourself, and like, you know, both parties get to know more, like, okay, like, huh, like that's actually like is not something that I'm very comfortable with if I would have in a marriage, or like, oh, this is actually something that I would be willing to compromise and stuff like that. I feel like even that is a good way to like be like, you know, make sure to like see like, oh, like what am I, you know, getting to even know yourself even more of what you like and stuff
What
like
is
that.
chaste? Just so maybe
Chaste dating
listeners
is
that
pretty much not fornicating. And
well, no, I mean, I'm assuming there's a purity to that, but I mean, does chaste dating mean anything else besides? No,
I think there's a lot of gray area, but I think that with chaste dating, a lot of it could even include just like making sure you're not like, I mean, I don't think French kissing is like I think I'm like
freedom kissing, if you want to go.
freedom. Like I think like
Millennials get that joke.
Yeah.
I what I do know is that, you know,
Wait, I didn't get
there
that
is-
one, and I'm a millennial.
Oh, you don't remember when everything after September 11th, everything was like, you know,
Oh,
freedom
exactly.
fries.
Freedom
is a-
fries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm
Yeah.
a millennial
It
out of
gives like
myself.
Gulf of America energy.
You're like, you
yeah.
got the soul of a
Yeah,
boomer.
I was
Yeah.
born a few days before the Twin Towers fell, so
What?
Oh my gosh. And
August
it's born.
28th.
Oh,
August
oui, bebe.
28th.
You were born the year of 9/11?
2001, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. I feel a big generation gap right now. Oh my goodness.
So you don't know what MySpace is, do you?
I heard of it.
Oh,
I've heard
my
of it in
word.
the ancient manuscripts and stuff. You know?
The ancient the millennial
Yeah.
tradition.
Yeah, the
passed on.
millennial
Millennial
traditions,
tradition,
yeah.
yes.
On the chaste
yes.
dating thing, I want to say this was something that I remember. I had a friend who waited till marriage or his wedding day to kiss his wife, right? And we all thought, I mean, if we're being totally honest here, it's like we probably were like, that's weird. Like
little
that's
over the top.
That's admirable, right? But
Yeah,
like,
it's lovely, but
you
it
have
feels
to have
over-
some
yeah.
like, how do you like? What if they're bad? And you know the answer, like even in your head, you're like, what if they're a bad kisser? It's like, well, first off, like, wouldn't you rather have morals and assume that you could actually like, you know, like get better at something like that? But it was so interesting that I even had the reaction like, that's extreme, right? And then what do you call it? I ended up dating a girl who I just like had one of the best experiences, and it was like I was like, hey, I don't want to have any sort of inkling of any sort of, and it was very short. It was only a couple months, and it was such a cool. We just would hang out and get to know each other, and we learned very quickly. Oh, we want different things,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And we,
yeah.
and I remember when we like parted ways, it was like a day of like, oh, bummer, I can't like call and talk like, and it was, and now we're great friends. Like, and it's literally, and I was like, oh, what if like God, because I would have said this sounds insane, right? And I'm not judging anyone because I was like, wow, I've definitely like in every other relationship I've kissed, and it's been like, and it hasn't worked out. So I was like, oh, let's just run the numbers, you know? And it was such a remarkable experience. And I will say, just turning that side of the brain off, right, of any sort of physical inclination, and just saying, hey, I'm going to focus on just like get to know you as a friend and a person, because that, as anybody knows, that can be turned on like that, right? And so, you know, it's like, and also people would ask me like, how do you know if you're attracted? Like, oh, I can see someone across the room and get very attractive, right? You know, like I brought Sidecar donuts. I don't need to try one of them to know that they're delicious, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Sidecar.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just was like, I was saying to your chaste dating, I wonder if that's what I was talking about, because I just experimented with that recently, and I was like, that was such a beautiful experience, and we learned something like, hey, not for each other.
I'm getting so excited about what I'm going to say. Okay, look. Okay, this is based on what I've read of like just traditional dating, but also paired with science. So with neuroscience, I read the book called Hooked, and I think
it's a good one.
It's a great book, right? And like I think there's a part where it talks about how couples that actually experienced sexual relations, right, have a harder time. The breakup hurts a lot more. The point is that there are chemicals that are exchanged when you engage in some physical acts that are like can be sexual.
Oxytocin.
Now, I'm thinking to myself, have there been studies that show that with kissing? Like with even mere, like, you know, French kissing, or even merely like in the lips, just pecking. So I wonder, I'm like, you know, like, I don't know if I'm hesitant to say if it's a sin or not to like peck in the lips or whatever. I'm hesitant. I don't
If
think
you go
it
to
is.
Italy, you're sinning every time you meet a grandmother.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
Well, there you
everyone
go.
kisses.
Yeah,
So,
and that's where I would be like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's like over the top, right?
like in my
But-
family, it's like, mwah, mwah, like,
Right.
like
But,
you kiss your brother.
Of course.
But you know the line of your heart. Like,
Not
you-
like that, but
I think,
like, you're
I
just
think
like-
I think you're getting what I'm saying though. Like there can be stuff that maybe like I think friendship would be like French kissing would be more of like a thing of like, okay, yeah, that's clearly something that's like, more like explicitly romantic.
You mentioned oxytocin. Tell us about that.
Yes, go for it.
Yes, no, 100%. I can't say that I agree with like no physical contact whatsoever when dating.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
No, and I don't even think you're saying that you agree with that. I think we're just presenting it as a topic, but I just want to, I work with a lot of secular clients and a lot of Christian and Catholic clients, as I've stated before. Years ago, when we had first started doing the work that we do, when we first started our company, we kept on getting these women that were in their late 30s. And they were like, I don't know what is going wrong, but they kept on coming in with the same issue. They would date a guy for a couple months and then it would end. The guy would lose interest. The guy would pull away. And these were not Catholic, they were not devout Catholic women, devout Christian women. So then we dug in a little more and we said, okay, like what's going on? And they said, well, I slept with him. And, like society says it's the, this is modern culture. We're very blessed in that we're surrounding ourselves. And that's why community is so wonderful, because we can surround ourselves with like-minded people. But a lot of people in modern culture, a majority of society, this is the norm.
I was in it for most of my life.
Yeah, they're sleeping together after, a couple months, and it's weird if they don't. And then the man loses interest and pulls away. And the woman then is bonded. She releases oxytocin. I talked to Lila about this. We did a bit more of a deep dive.
Go watch that episode. It's a good episode.
Yeah, in our fun episode. But I didn't mean that sarcastically. It was very fun. I had a really fun time.
It was fun.
It was a
fun episode on oxytocin.
I don't know why it came out so sarcastically. But men release a totally different cocktail of hormones that doesn't allow them to bond. But it is really important, I believe, in the courtship process to build oxytocin together, because you're co-regulating and it's really important to, when you're even giving each other a hug, there are studies that show scientifically it lowers stress hormones, and also how you can tell if you're not in a great relationship is if your cortisol levels are very high. And a lot of times people that are in toxic relationships, there's a trend right now where you can literally see girls are showing pictures like, oh, I would date again, but this is how I looked when I was dating the last time. And it's the woman's bloated, has all of this acne. So, but then when you're in a healthy relationship, your skin is clear, your stress hormones are lowered. So a lot of this, it's a combination of physical, not intimacy in that you're sleeping together, because that is the ultimate, should be safe for marriage. It's beautiful. But even if, I am a big believer in physical contact when you're dating, because it does help to build that bond and to build that connection.
Oxytocin is released in hugging?
Yeah.
I think what the point is you're making.
Dog release it if you pet your dog.
I think the point you're making, which is such a good one, and I'm curious your guys' take on that, is basically it's an idea of non-sexual physical affection.
Yes.
Where it's not like this is just to turn each other on. This is not a sexual thing that we're doing here. This is an affectionate thing. And obviously there's some nuance there, but largely speaking, you can give someone a hug. You can give someone, like, I do believe there's such a thing as a chaste kiss. Now you got to be mindful. There's a lot of nuances here in gray areas, but
what kind of kiss? What kind of hug? Like there is nuances.
But that's also why it's important.
You can hold hands. You can sit close and cuddle. Like
we can't hold hands.
You said it's to grow. So I'm curious about this, right? And again, I totally am of the mindset, like, everyone knows their line and what, for me, it was an experiment, because I was like, oh, like I just, I know that those things can escalate and crowd. I was like, I don't want anything to cloud my judgment, right? And we all know, maybe all of us have dated someone where we just have crazy chemistry, and it makes you completely overlook like the fact that, hey, we actually don't have the same value sets or whatever, right? And I see that everywhere, and I was like, you know what? I have some of my friends who did this, and they have amazing marriages, and it's like, okay, I'll let you. And it added such a level of clarity that I was like, because even then, I mean, I'm still a little kid, like hold someone's hand, and I'm just like it just like freaks out. But you mentioned something that you encourage physical contact to help bond, but it's like I'm asking the question: shouldn't we figure out whether we should try and bond to that person even first? Like, because like
that's
100%. But a relationship is not just logic, and it's not just it's head and the heart. It's the melding between the head and the heart. Again, listen. I'm a matchmaker.
You're the professional.
I'm a matchmaker.
Yeah, you're the professional,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
also, I'm not a priest. I'm not a,
We're just picking your brain here. We're just trying
I'm
to
just
see,
giving
like-
you my perspective.
She's not a priest.
I'm not a priest. I'm not a nun.
Be the first
I'm not a
female priest.
I know, right?
No, I'm kidding.
Plus, maybe I'll be a saint one day. Maybe. I learned that that's our goal, is to like all strive for sainthood, which I had no idea that was my goal. Which
She's getting deep in her Catholic faith.
I know I have a lot of work to do, let me tell you. But all that to say, from my perspective, I think that if I am not an extremist person when it comes to these things, I just have seen when you have strong boundaries, and if exactly like you had said for yourself, you know that you cannot think clearly if you are having any kind of, kissing or anything like that. Amazing. I have no judgment whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think for 80% of the population, I would say it's good to see if you can be together, not in a sexual way.
What's everyone's boundary? I'm curious if folks are willing to share. Like, how do you see the bright line in terms of physical intimacy that you think is going to both be prudent for you personally and is moral within the faith?
I have a clear answer.
And I think there's some subjectivity here, and there's some
No, there
obviously
is.
clear lines as well.
But what do you want to go first, or?
Why don't you go first?
Sure. So
And we can decide if we agree with it.
perfect. I would love to go first. So the I think the boundary really is, and I think this is universally with anyone, is when sexual excitement arouses, that's the boundary. Like that's when you know, like you cannot, like that's what, like you should not be doing that, right? So I think that for some people that might be different. Like let's say, and I think a lot of people, to be honest, because a lot of men have like literally been introduced to pornography since like 11 years old. Honestly, some of them like a lot of men like, and there can be like people that talk about that, men that might talk about that like, oh, like, even some type of hugs might be a little bit like too much or whatever. Like it's all going to be very subjective according to the person and whatnot. But it's very tragic that pornography has distorted like the culture so much, and like I guess hypersexualized so many people, and like it has lasting effects that of course can be tried to be healed and whatnot. But through that healing, there's a varied amount of times depending on how bad it was, depending on what you saw maybe and stuff like that. So like it really depends, and like I would say this like. I mean, I want to know more about like what you're saying, the studies that you're saying and whatnot, because I do want to make sure that I'm grounded in the truth. I would also say that just like because of just, I mean, like how bad it's gotten in our modern day, I would dare to say maybe like if there needs to be physical content, like be careful about that, of course, which I'm sure you agree with, right? But like maybe try for both couples, for both sides to maybe try to get that from the same sex as much as possible, before you have to be like, okay, well, I just need it from like the opposite sex, right? Because I feel like that could be a maybe more prudent way to go about
Well,
that.
I think there's truth to what you're saying too. I'm curious your take on that. I mean, hug a baby, like we're human, we're made for touch. Touch is not bad. Like touch is a beautiful
I'm not
thing.
saying that at all.
So-
I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that I think that like like there's a difference between like someone like being like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, like quick hug, right? Versus someone being like, oh my gosh, I missed you so much, and then just like embracing for like a period, like a great period of time, just in like that's more, that's either family or like a someone else. It's just I feel like it varies a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think boundaries with, opposite sex friends are, I mean, so essential.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not a physical contact expert by any means. I'm a matchmaker, and I know what generally people, and I think that there is a line of, and I think there are very easy ways of preventing things from going to, to that different level that then you are.
It's all very great, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think that we've dealt with I'm just thinking back to my clients, because we've dealt with such a variety, and some very devout Catholic, and then some Catholic, and then that. but I do find that when they do put those boundaries on, that even very practically, like saying, hey, I would love for you to come up to to my apartment or to my home, but but I think it's important to not have that be like a third date. I think a lot of guys, like something that we see a lot is a lot of guys will invite a woman to their apartment or to their home to cook for them. And whenever we hear that, we're like, ding, 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 red flag. No, abort mission. Do not enter. Do not go, because that is essentially like, it's come, I'm going to cook for you. And then things escalate, even with the best intentioned men, but they have to have a very strong, they have to have strong guardrails.
How far do you think is too far for Christians, Alessandra?
I mean, I think for Christians, and I think, generally for everybody, wait until marriage. It's so beautiful and amazing. And so I think that would be wonderful. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer. It's just waiting for marriage. But I'm also, I think that like hugging and cuddling, I think it's so beautiful, and it's such a beautiful part of a romantic relationship. And, otherwise, I don't know. I don't.
Well,
I think it's
this
just
is an emotional answer.
Yeah.
This is not me saying I write seven logical, research-based books. This is my emotional answer as a woman. And also just knowing you just getting a hug from your man after a tough week there's nothing better, and it does build.
And I think that, you could say, well, the question, how far is too far, is the wrong question anyway. It's like, how do we best love the person?
Exactly.
And sometimes love when you're dating is a hug, it is a cuddle.
No,
so
exactly.
I think again, and to your point, I liked what you said about, well, if it's starting
Like,
sexual
if you know
arousal,
that,
then
it's a simple
that's
line.
a red
It's a simple
flag right
line.
there.
It's a simple line. If you know that you're starting to become sexually aroused by it, that's the boundary. Like that's when it stops.
What do you
right?
think, Ryan?
It's something I'm still like sorting through, because one, I think everyone has a different journey. I do agree. I think scripture's pretty clear on like one definitive line that you could infer. But, I'm also just like asking myself, when Paul mentions, like, I don't know if it's more or just about the same, but it's like, it's basically greed and sexual morality, right? He is constantly admonishing multiple letters, like, hey, flee from this, right? Flee from this, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I go, okay, what does that mean? Especially in a culture that's so hypersexualized. And I also, so I go, okay. And then also we know in scripture, right, that there are, Paul says, hey, you defer to the weaker brother, right? Like one person eats meat, another eats vegetables. One considers this day holy, another considers this, right? And the Christian response is to always defer to the person who says, hey, I think I have a struggle with that line, right? And that could be content. I know many people who can't listen to Exorcist files, right? And they're like, hey, it's just too stimulating for me, right?
Horror movies too.
Horror movies, right?
Yeah.
I know others, for example, like language doesn't bother me as much, right? I'm able to watch Joe Pesci in several mafia movies. Is it the best thing? Probably not. But it doesn't affect me.
You better be able to.
Yeah.
And this, with Lila and I,
We like
as
Joe
the
Pesci?
Italian.
Oh, no,
Who is he?
I walked in,
He's like an Italian.
Oh, wait, keep going.
Italian.
Casino
I'm
was
just
on, and I
kidding.
was like,
We're not-
whoa,
we're
not
not a mob.
okay.
It was a bad mob joke.
But no, so you go, okay, so some people, for example, they can't watch certain, like they're like one scene and it just like affects them. And so out of concern and care, if for example, if one partner's like, hey, I'm sorry, but like if we cuddle on the couch, right, it actually caused, and one thing I'm also processing is that we didn't get into this, but like, what is a successful date? What is a successful courtship? And for me, it's like, okay, if it's all about, hey, just discerning, like, is this God's best, right? Is this, and also a bad date can be good info because like, hey, not a fit, right? Cool.
Right.
And good dating can also result in, hey, we decided, we took out this, ambiguity, right? We've all had situationships where it's like, will they, won't they? And we let it go on for a lot. And one of my bigger regrets is there's a couple of girls that are like, man, I wish I'd asked out earlier just because we would have figured out very quickly and I wouldn't have hidden behind the joke is textual, just banter for so long, right? And
The pen pals.
yeah,
We call you boys
I
the
almost
pen
made the
pals.
joke. Well, I almost made the
You're
joke
kind.
textual intercourse, but it's not actually. There's nothing sexual. It's just more like guys will flirt via text,
Yep.
right? And I remember just thinking, wow, I wish I had just gone on a few dates and not made it into such a big deal and been like, hey, oh wow, you'd figure out pretty quickly that it's actually you're more excited by the prospect and the potential and the attention rather than is this a fit. And so I'm also asking what activities cloud the judgment early on, because you can very quickly, and this is my personal opinion, right? I like to be friends. I like to get to know someone. Also, see who they hang out with, like you can learn so much, yes, you should go on a date if you want to get to know someone, but you can also learn so much from being around people based on like, if you have a friend group, right? See, like, I mean, that, I guess this works if you're in mutual friend groups, but you can learn a lot, right? And then how do you have conversations and just get to know them at a friendly level? Because I will say, I think some people, cuddling can even be a crutch where it turns into, I'm stressed, I'm going to kick the can down the road. I don't know if this is marriage material, but I'm going to cuddle and watch Netflix, right? And that's something that I'm working through, because that's like, I know there are days I'm like, it would just be so fun to sit on the couch and just watch a movie and cuddle with someone, right? But is that going to help for both of us further the goal of like, hey, are we a fit for whatever we want to do for the kingdom?
But I would argue that's a piece of the pie. If you cannot relax with somebody, I remember in my dating journey, I dated this guy and he was a world beater. He was a world beater. He was type A, just ready to go. Boom, 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 boom. He was like, all right, I'm going to do, 50 push-ups right now. And then this. And I loved that when we were dating, and we would have dates that would last so long. They would last hours and hours and hours. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, this man, he's whoa. And then
what does that mean? Like in a good whoa?
No, in a great way, because I was so blown away, because I was like, we're dating, we're learning about each other, we're talking, but then we went away together. It was a very like PG, like
plot
really
twist.
good.
Okay, here we go.
It was a really PG trip. It wasn't anything nefarious. And I realized that this, bless his soul, he did not have an off button. And I have a dimmer. I have a dimmer. I am very bubbly when I'm Alessandra Conti. Like right now, I'm Alessandra Conti with laryngitis. So like I'm very I'm very blah, 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 blah. But like when I'm relaxing, when I'm Allie, when I'm Alessandra, I'm just very like enjoying life. But this man was operating here all the time. So I learned for me in real time that the cuddling part, like, can I relax with somebody? Can I just sit on the couch with them? We don't have to be talking about, about throw and, scripture and this 24/7. I burn out. Well, whatever.
Amazing.
Throw, whatever.
Invite this guy on the show.
You guys, I'm sorry.
He went to the woods to live deliberately.
He is.
Oh my goodness.
This man is now. Man is now happily married. He is a wonderful.
We can hang out with Franco and I. We don't have a lot going on.
Yeah, exactly.
He found his Energizer bunny, but I am not an Energizer bunny.
It wasn't meant to be.
Wait.
So I think.
Do you think the? Wait, go ahead, Lila.
No, you go.
Ladies
I want to hear what you're going to ask. I want to hear what you're going to ask.
Okay, two things.
Yes.
I think what me and Ryan are trying to get at is that maybe like not that you can't relax with someone, but like when do you think it would be appropriate to kind of give up some like physical affection prior to marriage for the sake of the other? And B, do you think you might have associated cuddling with relaxing all the time?
Well, I definitely think I really enjoy cuddling, and I think it's very relaxing.
Everyone loves cuddling.
I want to be clear. We're all pro.
He didn't like cuddling, and that's a big portion of what I enjoy.
So you're hitting at, do you enjoy that, right?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is a context where we both enjoy cuddling.
Enjoy doing it.
But you know what? Instead of actually having difficult conversations about what we want or where we want to go, I'm like, no, tonight I just want to cuddle. And for me, it's actually not a huge difference in my head between that and kissing, because one is basically saying I'm going to trade physical affection for punting, which is great. Again, it's phenomenal in the right context. But if you're like on the fence with someone and you're not sure and you start cuddling, that can, I think you could end up in a situation where it's happened to me where I'm just like, oh, I just really enjoy having someone here and there and not actually.
I'm going to throw in a Gen Z female perspective, not for me, obviously, because I'm not Gen Z female, but I am
so Gen Z.
Yeah, it's really Gen Z. This is really
my
shocking.
sister. This is my sister talking. Now I'm going to speak for you. Thanks, sis. Love you, sis. Okay, she just got engaged to be married, but she dated like a bajillion guys. She's 25 now.
It's a family thing. You both have dated a bajillion guys. Okay, wow. I'm learning something here. Wow.
All right. Anyways, no, but let me just
guess
say.
every rose does have its thorn.
No. Not like that. Not in a bad way. She just went on a lot of dates. Okay. It's not like she had a Chaste way. So anyway, so she was.
Which we promote.
We promote Chaste dating around this podcast. But anyway, so what she had this realization that she'd like fall hard and fast for these guys. They fall hard and fast for her. They'd be like dating. And like every 3 months, it's like, I met the guy I'm going to marry. I'm like, sis, I have heard that 5 times. Like, really? I'm sorry to out you. I maybe she'll make me take this out. We're going to do this. So what she did is she went on a dating fast because dating for her was way too much cuddling. And they were just cuddle buddies instead of like real world, are we going to be a good fit and getting to know each other? And because she's a cuddly person and she loves cuddles, right? She literally growing up, tickle me. And you're like, as a little girl, you like tickle her. So some people are very physically affectionate. That's important as a love language. It sounds like you're a cuddle bug, which I love. Everyone likes cuddles to some degree or another. But there is some truth to, is this relationship like a cuddle bug sesh?
Is it dependent on the physical?
Or is this relationship maybe have that element, but it's oriented towards discernment, towards marriage? And so what she ended up doing is doing a dating fast, becoming very good friends, strictly friends with this gentleman, this young man. They would go swing dancing with their group of friends. They would like do all the fun things that I guess Gen Zers do today. I don't know. What do you guys do for fun? Anyways, they would do those things. And then when the dating fast was towards the end, she was already caught feelings for this gentleman. He like loved her already. They were just, but there was no cuddling. There was no kissing. Yeah. And then bam, they're like, okay, I think this is it. And then within a short order, they were engaged.
And by the way, it's not like I don't think Ryan and I are saying like we're like anti-physical touch.
No, you're not saying that. I know that.
I think what we're trying to say is that like
not at all.
Because obviously in a marital bond, you have a lot of physicality in it, right? But before that, it's like, do you need it? Like, is it an absolute necessity to have that? Because it's like, I can see a woman is attractive, she is fit, she's bonding with me, our souls are connected.
Like, I would cuddle that.
It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like I don't think there's like, I'm like, there's not really much issue. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to know if I'd be great at kissing her when I'm like, I'm attracted to her. My soul is attracted to her. I think God's calling us to marriage. Why do I have to do it now when I could wait later?
All right, so let's take a poll: to cuddle or to not?
To cuddle or
not to cuddle? On this, we're all pro. We are so pro
We're all
cuddling.
pro cuddling.
It's more, again, I would just say there are circumstances where you go, okay, is this asking yourself constantly, like, is this a crutch to where I'm kicking the can down the road? Because my own personal experience, my biggest like regrets in dating are there were people I was with that are so amazing, and I like, oh my gosh, like would have been amazing partners, but I knew probably earlier on were not right for me, and I just kept in it, and for many reasons, right? And I think, but part of that was I do think things like cuddling and stuff can, because I remember even having the dialogue like, I don't want to have that conversation tonight, right? I know we need to like do a check-in. It's been it's been 6 weeks or whatever. Like, hey, is this like, are we dating? Is this like, or is there potential? And I would say, and this is maybe a little hot take, but I think, it takes time to get to know some. But I think pretty early on, especially for Christian dating, right?
Yes.
Because Christian dating introduces a very important variable, right? Which is like, you can't interpret the scriptures. I don't think any other, I may be wrong here, but I'm like, I just don't see, based on a reading of like Paul and everything, that, you can't, if the number one commandment that God gives, right, is like, hey, to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, right? If that's the number one thing, you can't really build something with someone if that's not a goal of theirs too. You can't go after the number one thing if that's not their number one thing too. So you can quickly, I think, meet people and go for a Christian and go, oh, this is something that is either on the radar or not. And then over time you can flesh out like the more like compatibility stuff. But like early on, I'm like, you can learn 80-20 really quickly.
I love that.
Yeah. And
any final thoughts?
Yeah.
Do a round of final thoughts.
I think men are fairly, from what I've learned from our clients that have actually then gotten married, they've said like, oh yeah, like I was pretty sure I knew on like the first date. But there is that level of discernment. And that's also something I hate the phrase, even though I love when you say it, because you say it with such like purity and just like when you know, but I, as a matchmaker, as like a jaded matchmaker, I've had these guys, as a jaded matchmaker here, a cuddling matchmaker.
Handle,
I know, jaded matchmaker. Jaded. I've seen that we've had to reframe that for a lot of guys, in that you choose your soulmate because you're going to God, you have free will. At the end of the day, we have free will. Yeah. So God could be like, oh, she's wonderful. Like, she's so great. Like, yes, she's great. Yeah. But then the enemy will also whisper in your ear, because the enemy hates marriage. The enemy hates
Good word.
family. So the enemy's going to whisper in your ear. So this happens every single time. And psychologists say it's one of the stages of a relationship is indecision. There will always be indecision. And sometimes it comes right before you walk down the aisle and you're like, oh my gosh, is this a huge but that's the enemy a lot of times if all those other elements line up. So that's why what we do in a secular way, because I always try to, okay, what am I learning in my Christian Catholic faith? How can I bring this to my clients that don't have this stuff? So we reframe it and we say, listen, we're going to make sure the elements are there. You're going to love this person. But at the end of the day, you need to be prepared that you will have indecision. That doesn't mean it's the wrong person, but you're going to experience that and it's okay. And then you make that choice because we have free will. So because the enemy hates marriage and hates family. So we have to battle against that. If it's with an amazing person, because I've seen so many great men then miss out
and they're single at 45.
It's the reframe. Yeah. It's the reframe. And I've been there. I've been there too
wrong
in
with
relationships.
Being single at 45.
I agree. There's nothing inherently wrong. But I think your point is so beautifully said for both men and for women. Because we'll have you close us out. We'll go to you next. But I do want to just say one quick thing to add on there because it kept coming to mind in this conversation. I haven't said it yet. So maybe it's a good prompting. But that there is, I think, this tendency to, when you want to have this confidence. And you have the confidence, you want to have confidence, but depending on your temperament, depending on the way that you interact with the world, you're going to have all kinds of things going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all kinds of things going on. So I think it's very normal to walk into engagement and marriage with trepidation, like you were saying earlier, Ryan, and to not expect that there will be the flash of lightning or the, writing on a scroll or some magical person. I had a prophetic dream and I saw you guys together in the dream or whatever that moment is. Like, use your reason, use your intellect, because God gave us that as a gift to make decisions. He gave you a mind to think and a will to choose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Lila.
Yeah.
Alessandra.
I think exorcist Father Dan Riel, he talked about how you can't trust your feelings. It's not like they're not the ultimate arbiter of reality. Like, sure, they are important. You have to take them into account 100%, but they can't be the final arbiter of like when you make decisions. That's huge. And I think and I think he even did talk about how the enemy could, I think he said something along the lines of that. At least I got the implication that the enemy could use your feelings against you pretty much, which is kind of what you're saying.
Oh, that's literally that's his best trick.
Yeah.
That's his best trick.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah. So 100%.
Yeah. He sows seeds of doubt.
Can we wrap up the cuddle talk?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think we.
Yeah.
I just have the same copy paste answers. Like if something, whatever it is, whether it's cuddling, whatever, if it's starting to sexually arouse you, let's stop it. Yeah. Flee, like you said, flee from
temptation.
sexual immorality. It's not fight it. It's like,
and
no,
I think as women to be respectful that line may be different for men than the woman, and to be have the conversation and be respectable of that, because that's another thing. As women, we're like, we're just cuddling.
Yeah.
And I was like,
are you aroused? Dating tips.
Just look at him.
I do think having the conversation early-ish on in the boyfriend girlfriend relationship of, okay, what are the good boundaries, because I want to protect your chastity,
and it might even
and I want to protect mine because
too.
I love you.
And it might even change throughout the relationship. Maybe you get really, really into someone, and maybe that could even be, I don't know, I'm just trying to spitball ideas. There could be even okay, at first you guys meet, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. But then you get to a point where you're extremely attracted to each other. And that can maybe even be, rise other things that wouldn't. So just be open to detach from oh, but this needs to happen. Be able to detach and just put God first and be like, okay, the whole point of this is discernment, right? Not if we can, do how many physical acts. I think a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this myself. I'm like, yeah, I do want to I'm a very touchy person. I do want to be very touchy with my girlfriend and stuff like that, right? But at the same time, I need to be able to detach, because my decision on whether I marry a woman or not is not going to be if how many times we hugged, or if we can, cuddle, or all these things that I can do before marriage. It's going to depend on do I find her to a sufficient attractive level? Of course that, can be fine. Or, and if I'm attracted to her soul. So that's just like yeah. So I just saying copy paste message. If you're starting to be if your sexual excitement starting to arouse in you, stop. Yeah, flee.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think that's solid, Franco.
Mhm.
Ryan, what are your any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, like to on Franco's point, like I think about the scripture, like, in Romans, and, it's like to offer your bodies up as a living sacrifice, right? So subsume your desires, right? So that you might discern what is the perfect and pleasing will of God. And so there is an element of us in all things, not just in sexual purity, but in all things
Yeah.
being pure so that we can discern God's best, right? He wants us to live by his statutes and his principles because he wants what's best for us. And so I think one, it's kind of made as a joke earlier, like you end up at 45 and single, and right. And this is something I want everyone to hear. I'm super passionate about, right? But we as Christians, we follow a single celibate male, right?
Yeah.
Paul was a single celibate male,
Yeah.
right? Who probably was married, and probably lost his wife or she left him after his conversion. But like the foundation of the faith is built on a guy who was a single celibate male. So any feelings of being single and somehow that is a non-preferred state, that is somehow lesser, that is something a lot of, I think, the church does, where they index, because more people get married than not, right? And I would argue that's probably for most people, they should get married, right? And to your point, the enemy does come out and say, oh, marriage is missing out, it's entrapping, it's limiting you, et cetera, right? And that I've really enjoyed meeting people who, some friends of mine who are amazing screenwriters and producers, and I always say, you're married with kids, what's the time suck like, as far as like, do you miss the time to yourself? Like, oh man, I've never been more productive and I've done better work than my married. So also, but if you're single, right, it's like, man, like there is such a beautiful blessing on this side. And we always forget Paul's line in 1 Corinthians 7, right? The married person will face many troubles in this life, and I wish to spare you this, right? And he says the single person's attention is focused on God. The married person, understandably, on how to please their spouse and God. And so there is a unique blessing on singleness, and God. And there's also two parts of this equation, right? You may be working on yourself and getting ready, but God may also be preparing someone for you and maybe be on a different journey. And he knows the convergence point. And I also think I know now I know so many people who I've stood at the altar, next to them as a groomsman, and I've seen that incredible joy on that day. And then I've been with them 10 years later when things are really tough. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's this other myth that's like, oh, marriage automatic. It's like, you find the person and it's just, that's the game. It's like, no, I know people who are married to the perfect person for them, I would say. Like, it's a great match, and it's still super hard.
Right.
So I would say, I hope everyone in singleness too, like I can honestly say I'm truly content. I'm so grateful that I found contentment, and there are blessings. And sure, are there Friday nights where I'm like, man, it'd be awesome to have a Netflix cuddle buddy, right? Or Hulu or whatever streaming service you apply to, right? But in general, though, it's like, but you know what? Like, God has called you to whatever season you're in, and there are so many unique blessings that you can enjoy in that. And so I just hope, don't sacrifice the season, because a lot of people just want to get married. Because the church, like, that's what you do. And then you can hang out with couples and you can do all that stuff. And it's like, you know what? There are unique blessings on the season, whatever you're in right now. And I hope everyone feels like, hey, trust in God, and results may vary. Look, you have your own unique story that God's working on. And that may be someone you meet tomorrow. It may be in 10 years. It might not be. You may, and that's the thing. It's okay. Whatever it is, like, it's going to be okay. But I generally will say, in my limited experience, I have seen almost everyone I know who has a heart for this has found someone. But it's been in a way different time, a way different way, and a way different person than they ever imagined. So to finish with the Ephesians, right? It's like he can do exceedingly and abundantly more than we could ever hope or imagine. And so I hope that for me, hope that for you, right? And I hope that he just does that. Whoever's listening needs that encouragement, that he could make it worth the wait.
Amen. Yeah. What a great way to wrap this up. Thank you, Ryan. Good word. Everybody, thank you. That was very fun. It got a little spicy too. We had a little sort of a disagreement, not quite.
Debate on cuddling.
We know, Miss Pro Cuddling.
Gosh.
She runs Cuddle Pack.
It's
big cuddle money,
You guys are amazing. Thank you. This was so fun.
I love what
Thank
the
you
stats
so
was given. It was amazing.
Fun.
I learned a lot. No, seriously.
Smash that subscribe button.
I know. Thank you, Ryan. We're going to put afterwards where you to find you all, but if you can each go quickly and share how to find you. Where can people find you?
At matchmaker Alessandra Conti, ALESS, and matchmakersinthecity.com if you want to be matched by one of our matchmakers.
Love it.
Beautiful. At the Franco TV. That's on all handles, and it's not a K. It's at THEFRANCO TV.
I am at the Bethea. That's BETHEA. But you can find my Exorcist Files at exorcistfiles.tv, and also our show Heaven Meets Earth, where we document incredible miracles and answered prayers at heavenmeetsearth.com. Subscribe today.
Amazing. Check it out, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
That was
Lila.
awesome. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did too. We're experimenting with the format of the show here, so let me know what you all think. As always, do not forget to subscribe to the show. Give us a like. And also make sure you give us 5 stars if you're listening on podcast app. That helps this show and our mission to bring the good, the true, the beautiful to media reach more people. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. And a huge thank you to EWTN, Eternal Word Television Network, which is the largest religious broadcaster in the world. You can get access to Lila Rose Show episodes 24 hours in advance at EWTN.com/on-demand. And a big thank you to EWTN and their incredible mission to bring souls to Jesus.